you always thought that this was going to happen, and maybe I should have trusted you when I had my doubts over the last few years. What are your expectations for George, and, how soon might this actually come to fruition?
I do know he has been training throughout this whole process. He's been training since the beginning. First of all, he's a martial artist anyway, but yeah, I always figured that he went out a little bit too early, that he didn't want to continue to fight. I'm nervous for him, man, because listen, in just 2 years, we've seen the sport evolve a very long time, and he's been out since 2013. So I hope that he's been keeping up with things. I think he has. And for George St. Pierre, obviously, I only see a big fight in his future. I don't know if it's going to be him going for a run at 170 pounds. I think it's going to be, more super fights that interest him. I think he deserves it. He's been in this game a very long time. He defended that belt for a very long time. I'm excited for him. I'm nervous for him as well. But I know that if there's one guy, when the lights come out, it's George St. Pierre. The guy, when it comes to competing, he's as good as it gets, a phenomenal athlete still. I hope his body is healthy. I think it is. And I don't think he would do something, if he wasn't 100% ready. So I think he's ready. I think he's in a good mind space. And, for a lot of fighters, for myself and a lot of other people, when you take yourself out of the game, you see the game in a very different way. It's almost like being on the battlefield and then being up on the hill looking down. You just see it in a very different way. And I think that George St. Pierre is going to have a very fresh perspective heading into the fight game now. And I think it's going to serve him well.
So in terms of what he's doing this for, certainly there's got to be some financial drive there, but you have often said that if you were to come back, and I don't know when our last conversation was about that, but you wouldn't want to fight a guy outside the top 10. So is there a championship aspiration here, or does he maybe think that the UFC middleweight champion, Michael Bisping, at present is a beatable guy who happens to have the belt? George St. Pierre right now, if that's the fight, and that is the fight that is the betting favorite to come together, George St. Pierre would be favored to become the UFC middleweight champion.
Yeah, no? I think. I think it'd be a tough fight. Michael Bisping is going to be a tough out for anybody. He's going to be bigger than George St. Pierre. He's a guy that's been extremely active, and that might be the fight that gets put together. I think that for the UFC, who wouldn't want to have George St. Pierre in there as one of the faces, as one of the champs, one of the guys with the belt? And I think that might be one of the things for the UFC to say, hey, yeah, you come back, we want to see you take on a belt holder. We want to see it at 170, or we want to see it at 185 pounds. So maybe that's the choice that's been given to him, but I suspect it's a fight that George St. Pierre feels he can win, and he wants it. So I'm really interested to see who they match him up with. I know Anderson Silva is the one fight they want to see, but I don't know if I want to see that at this point. I feel like that's a fight that should have happened a little while ago.
I tend to agree with you on Silva. I think ultimately there is a window and there's an argument to be made, and I think George would see it as a winnable comeback fight. I'm not sure it has the stakes that he's looking for. I want to inject Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson into the conversation here just because that is probably the fight I'm most looking forward to this year. It's been a fight 3 years in the making. Undeniably, there should be championship stakes when those two guys fight, given that one's 24-0 and one has won like 92 in a row in the UFC, right? So all of that being said, a fight between George St. Pierre and Conor McGregor is absolutely massive. Yes, absolutely massive. I don't know how many pay-per-view buys you're talking. Is that a bigger fight than Mayweather-McGregor? I don't know that I can take that leap, but I think it's damn close. Who's not watching George St. Pierre, Conor McGregor? So, again, they have options, right? Those guys can carry pay-per-views on their own, but is that not, we used to say Cyborg Rousey was the biggest fight we could make in the UFC. Is the biggest fight we can make right now at present not George St. Pierre versus Conor McGregor?
Without a doubt. That's the biggest fight in UFC history right there. You look at George St. Pierre and what he brings to the table. He was pretty consistent at around 1 million pay-per-view buys, is what I was hearing. And we know what Conor McGregor is bringing in. He's past that right now. So imagine a 2 million buy pay-per-view in the UFC between those two. I think that's a very realistic thing. And with the way the UFC's been doing things, they haven't been waiting around. They've been trying to go for the big game kill right away. They've been trying to put together the biggest fights they can as quickly as possible. That might be the fight. I mean, that's a really interesting fight, man. I would love to see it because Conor McGregor, when it comes to, being able to catch guys when they're trying to take them down or catch them from in close, he's as good as it gets, man. He's a different kind of striker. Now, can he stop that double leg of George St. Pierre repeatedly? Can he stop George St. Pierre from advancing position in his guard and where he can get a submission? I don't know. It's a fascinating fight. I'm really curious to see it. I don't know if we're going to see it right off the bat, but we just might. We just might, and that might be a nice consolation prize for Conor McGregor if he can't get Mayweather.
Yeah, no, you're right, and maybe you do wait. Again, George St. Pierre's not coming back for a one-off. I mean, there's always some risk, even calculated risk, when you don't strike when the iron is hot. But, part of the reason I bring up Khabib and Tony is because there is that competition angle, right? And I understand that one of those guys certainly deserves an opportunity to fight Conor to become the undisputed UFC lightweight champion. But you know what? Michael Jordan's coming back to MMA. There's just not a whole lot you can do. I mean, Yoel Romero might get screwed by this. You don't know exactly who is going to end up on the wrong side of this GSP comeback. But, when one of the consensus greatest of all time, I think this is a guy who actually many now consider, because of Anderson's recent run and John Jones's inability to make the walk. I think a lot of people, there's steam now that George St. Pierre is the greatest of all time. And whether he's 1, 2, or 3 in that conversation, Michael Jordan's coming back. And unfortunately for Khabib or Tony, it might delay the winner's shot at Conor McGregor, and Nate Diaz obviously is still in the mix as well. But I don't know, man. I would like to see Conor and George St. Pierre. I really think that it would just be that type. It would be like De La Hoya Mayweather. The whole world's watching. 2.5, 3 million pay-per-view buys easy. So we'll see. Let's get to Ray Longo.
It's now time for the Ray Longo Minute.
I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
The Ray Longo Minute. Starring Ray Longo. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
All right, Ray Longo now joins us for his weekly segment. So you're at the gym. I know the Tuesday show is kind of throwing you off. So Chris Weidman is late, thus we're getting a few minutes with you this morning, man. How are you?
I think that's it. Chris Weidman is late, and we're going to do this. Let's get it going.
All right, I'm gonna text Mousasi. I'm gonna send a direct message to Gegard Mousasi that Weidman is late today. Maybe he'll take him lightly or something.
I got to tell you, I don't want to jump the gun, but this kid is back on track. I'm loving what I'm seeing, and I can't wait for this fight. I actually wish it was next week.
Nice. Yeah, well, April 8th coming up quickly. Well, I just want to grab you today and talk about Eddie Gordon, who is now going to be on this redemption season of The Ultimate Fighter. Ken Flo was going to do it, but he asked for like $750,000, and the purse is only...
You know what the problem with Ken Flo, even at 170 would be too late for him. He's used to 185.
Exactly.
Even one side, Ken Flo, come on, you went to the finals at 85. You could easily do this at 170. Easy.
Listen, the real reason, I thought it was going to be at 205. I wanted to do my fifth weight class, so it didn't work out. And yes, I did want about $750,000. They couldn't make it.
Yeah, well, 170 was too boring for you.
Exactly.
Well, if you have seen the pictures on Kenny Florian's Instagram of him in a Speedo, he looks like a 175 and in shape.
Man.
So, Ray, Eddie Gordon, released from the UFC October of 2015, returning here on this redemption season. I know he keeps himself in great shape. Is this going to be a welterweight competition for him? Is that right?
Yeah, this is crazy, man. I mean, look, when Eddie Gordon first came into the gym, I'm going to say he was 280. He was kind of still messed around with some football stuff, but I'm saying 280. I mean, the fact that this guy left for the show at like 183, 184, ripped up is phenomenal. I mean, I'm blown away with his dedication to, keeping his weight down and always getting better. And this is great. This is crazy. 170. I mean, I don't know what's going on the show. I don't think he's ever done it before. But he left here pretty close, and he looked good and mentally was in tune with everything. And man, I don't know. I can't say enough about Eddie Gordon's desire and his dedication and his perseverance as an athlete.
Well, it's great. Of course, a big part of the challenge is potentially making that weight 3 or 4 times.